Without no wounds, there can be no healing. Without no wounds, there can be no growth, no transformation, no awakening. You see, we spend so much of life trying to avoid what hurts us, what makes us uncomfortable, what makes us suffer, and what makes us break down, that we sometimes fail to realize that even if we are successful avoiding some of these things from time to time, there will come a time where we simply can't avoid the suffering, the pain, the hurt. And it's precisely in those moments where we have to develop a different skill set, not necessarily one of evasion or one of stealth or one of trickery to try to, squeeze out of a tight situation, but rather a skill set of observance, of patience, of humility, and of a deep and unwavering willingness to grow. I always say it, for those of you who've been following this channel for a while and watching some of the videos, you'll see that I talk a lot about this theme of pain being a great teacher. In fact, it can be one of our greatest teachers. But even if we acknowledge this, right, even if we come to terms with this reality, many of us are unaware of our wounds, or we're at least unaware of what caused our wounds, the deeper layer issues, the things that are kind of hiding in the back of the closet, if you will, that we haven't really revisited. We haven't really, swung the doors wide open and let the sunshine kind of illuminate whatever is hiding in that closet. And that's essentially all our thoughts, all our emotions, right? We're this human being, right? This experience that we're living is a culmination of everything that has come before this moment. And it will keep going as long as we have time to live on this world. But as with everything, if you keep collecting and collecting and collecting, but you never actually take the time to take stock of what you really have, well, then you'll just end up with a very cluttered, crowded, messy storage room, right? You'll accumulate things that you no longer need. You won't be able to find the things that you actually do need. And it's funny as I say this analogy, it's so prevalent to the situation I'm in right now, which is preparing for a long distance move, where we're literally in the process of decluttering and seeing what we really need, seeing what we want to take, and obviously letting go of what we don't need. And in many ways, this action is such a wonderful reminder of analyzing our wounds, because our wounds, as I mentioned, are there for a purpose. They serve a purpose. They're not meant to be there forever, right? Often we'll carry this baggage, or we'll carry this trauma, we'll carry this hurt, thinking that, for some reason it needs to be a part of us. It defines us. It makes up our identity, when in reality, it's just a marker on the path. It's just a teacher on the journey. And just like every other marker, just like every other journey, there is a finite timeline. But we have a incredible ability to influence how long or how short that timeline can actually be. If we never observe our thoughts, if we never take the time to look within, to heal, to let go of maybe some of our limiting beliefs or our limiting behaviors, well, then that learning curve, that learning period will last a very long time. It's kind of like failing a class and then having to take it all over again next year. No one wants to be taking the same subject or the same class for years and years on end, right? We all, I would hope so, want to progress, want to advance, want to grow, and hopefully want to achieve our full potential. But we can only do that if we take stock of what we have, if we can actually clear what it is that we no longer need. And so wounds are a wonderful way for us to begin that inner work. Because candidly, not a lot of us will do that introspection when things are going well, right? When we're in a groove in life and things are just kind of naturally coming our way, yes, there may be some gratitude, there may be some reflection, but it's when we really hit rock bottom, when we really hit these moments of deep and intense suffering that perhaps not right that moment, perhaps not in the weeks, months, or even years after, but there will come a time where we look back at that wound, we'll look back at that event and the wounds that it created, and that reflection, that looking back, it gives us an opportunity to really dissect our wounds and to look at it from a whole new lens, from a whole new perspective. Because it's amazing how much time can give us that objectivity, that ability to kind of create some distance between us and the event, and to not get lost into this endless game of identifying ourselves with that event or identifying ourselves with that suffering. So if you're, struggling with any sort of drug abuse or anything of that nature, and you found you're wondering, how do I get past this, right? You're starting to realize how damaging that can be, not only to you, but to your loved ones and to the society at large. And you want to kind of get out of that rut, you want to get out of that cycle. And so you begin this journey of looking within and seeing why it is that you're actually doing those things in the first place. Nothing happens without a reason. Everything can be stemmed back and traced back to either a particular event or a series of events or a series of thoughts and beliefs. And before you know it, you start to lose sight of why you're doing the thing that you're doing. All of a sudden, it's no longer governed by that initial why, but rather it's just habit, right? It's just you get lost in that rut and you do it every single day, and all of a sudden you feel like it becomes a part of you. Even if you want to let it go, it can't, it doesn't want to let you go. You don't want to let it go because it becomes a habit and you've accepted that as your being. But in order to grow, you must go back to those wounds. It's not enough to just stop the abuse today. It's not enough to just shun whatever you have been abusing today. It requires a deeper, penetrating, almost psychological analysis of why you got into that behavior in the first place. Because until you examine and address and ultimately overcome whatever issues or challenges that led to where you are today, then you'll never really solve the issues of that wound, right? You're kind of putting a band-aid on the problem, but you're not actually curing the the wound. You're not curing the scars and everything else that is, living beneath that band-aid. So I wanted to, take some time just kind of opening things up and making this a very comfortable and hopefully free-flowing session where you start to maybe reflect on some of your own wounds. Obviously, if you're attracted to this video and you're listening to it still, there's a part of you that probably experienced some wounds as well. Maybe it can be the wounds left from a feeling of loss, whether that's, losing a relationship, losing a loved one, losing a pet. Maybe that wound could be a feeling of insecurity or a feeling of not being enough, a feeling of not knowing our purpose, not knowing our way. You see, there's a lot of ways that we can accumulate wounds, and each one of us has a unique journey to travel through life. But these techniques and these tricks and these insights are really universal to us all. Right? It doesn't matter what your wound is, it doesn't matter how many you have, and it doesn't matter how deep those wounds are. If you take the time to do the inner work, to do the reflection, to start changing things for the better, then you'll notice that those wounds no longer have a hold over you. You'll start to realize that those wounds were really there just to teach you something, just to help you enhance your understanding of life and the world and what this whole experience of existence is really about. That's really what it comes down to. Um, I always find that wounds are something that, while they can be beneficial in the long run, you also don't want them to keep growing and to keep festering and to keep taking up space in your closet and your storage, right? It's important that we elevate our awareness, number one, to realize that we have these wounds, but more importantly, to then have that willingness, to then have those set of practices or skills or techniques to be able to dissect those wounds. I remember when I used to do a lot more coaching back in the day, a lot of what I was doing was uncovering those wounds, really helping people get to the core of understanding why they do the things that they do. Because we may think that we're in full control. We may think that we have full autonomy and decision making in our hands, but a lot of what we do is governed by habit. And a lot of what we do is governed by irrational thinking and kind of a mindless thinking, to be quite honest. A thinking of just, built on false ideas and false beliefs, and we attach an importance to them, but in reality, they're nothing but a facade, right? And so we built up this lie with wrapping it around with this layer of false truth, if that makes sense. We imagine things to be real when in reality they're not. And so part of the trick to healing from our wounds is to detect what is true and what is false, right? And this requires a very deep and honest conversation with ourselves. It requires a deep reflection of those things that got me to where I am today. Are they really true? Those ideas and those thoughts that I've held on to all these years, are they really true? And what you'll find, hopefully, is that a lot of the times that's not true reality. It's only something that's created by the mind, by the ego, by the false self, right? And this is why you'll see I often, interweave and interplay spirituality with real life problems, because I don't view spirituality as just something that you do in your spare time to get closer to God, but that is separate from your rest of your life. I believe spirituality is life. Spirituality is the key to living life. And without spirituality, whatever form that may take, right? I'm not arguing for one school of thought or one way of life, but really just when I refer to spirituality, I'm referring to it in the grand totality of things, which is having a deep connection of God, understanding that this life is finite and that there is a purpose and we all have something special to bring to this world, and that it is our duty and our purpose, and it would behoove us if we understand what that is and we work towards that every single day to realize, right? You hear a lot about this concept of self-realization, how that is the pinnacle of all human achievement and spiritual achievement, which is to ultimately realize, who am I? Who am I in this world? And why am I here? And so when I talk a lot about these spiritual concepts, the purpose of it is not just to enter this, feel good trance like state, but really to address the challenges that we face, right? When you have a wound, it's so easy to turn to a friend. It's so easy to turn to help. It's so easy to cave in, right? It's so easy to be so consumed and so overwhelmed by everything that's going on. And maybe in that moment, you're not thinking of spirituality. You're not thinking of God. You're not thinking of these deeper questions of who am I? But believe me, those are a part of your journey. And those are some of the keys to getting past your wounds. So the awareness of it, I think, is super important and can't be overstated. You really need to have that awareness. And so how do we develop that awareness, right? If that awareness is the first step towards healing our wounds, well then the first, to get to that level of awareness, we must remove whatever it is that can distract us from cultivating that awareness, right? If you have a whiteboard that's completely full with markings from a marker, right? And there's no room to write anything, to write a sentence, to draw a picture, etc. Well, then you have to erase everything in that whiteboard in order to write something new. And our lives are, in essence, a whiteboard that's completely full. And not necessarily full of good things, right? There's a difference between fullness and what is actually wholesome, what is actually necessary. And that's why you hear many of these spiritual teachers saying that the true point of awakening is not by accumulating all this knowledge and accumulating all this wisdom. The true point is in realizing that everything you've learned up until this point needs to now be unlearned, needs to now be reversed, right? And so it's kind of this weird, paradoxical truth in life that you learn it all, but what you learn needs to be unlearned, needs to be untrained. And you're not just pulling back a couple of months or a couple of years, you're in essence pulling back your entire life. Things that you've learned as a child, things that you've learned as a young kid that you've unconsciously picked up. You must now go back and examine all of that. And so to develop that awareness, you need to have that willingness to spend the time to cultivate a silence, to allow that stillness within to ultimately emanate and allow you to enter this deeper state, to actually go within, right? And there's a lot of ways to do this, right? I talk a lot about the powers of meditation, the powers of introspection. Even journaling, for example, can have so many benefits to help us organize our thoughts and to help us go a little bit deeper. Nowadays you have the benefit of technology. You can, if you don't have a friend right there, you can, work with ChatGPT or Gemini or any one of these AI tools, and you can literally have a conversation. Now, I'd probably caution you not to divulge too much of your personal life there, but you get the picture, right? You know that there are resources there for you. If you're not feeling comfortable doing it entirely alone, there are resources there that can help you penetrate further. One technique that I love is just keep on asking why, right? If I eat a lot of junk food at night, right, which I sometimes am guilty of, I have to ask myself why. And then the answer could be, well, because I had a long day and I want to decompress. Okay, why? Why is that? Why do you feel the need to decompress? Well, because work was a lot, and I feel like I'm in this rat race, and I just can't. I just need a moment, and I get that through snacking to just let it all go. Well, then why does it feel like a rat race? Well, in addition to work being a lot, I want to show that I'm a good worker, and I want to leave a good impression, and I want to do my best. And then you dig down deeper. Well, why do I want to do my best? Why do I want to go further? Well, because I want to make sure that I can, be fully employed and provide for my family. And then you dig further. And it's like, okay, well, then why do you want to do that? And you kind of get to the crux of the reason. You uncover that, okay, it's not just a decompression technique. It's not just the moment to relax. It's really stemming from this idea of you want to help your family, you want to help others. And perhaps that's not the best way to cope with it, but it kind of starts to answer why I do that particular behavior. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a wound, right? Probably it's more of a physical wound, for my personal physical health. I wouldn't say it's as much a mental or emotional wound, but you kind of get the picture, right? If I sometimes get paranoid a lot when I lock the doors at night. Sometimes I'll double, triple, or even multiple times just check to make sure that it's locked. When in reality, you just need to check it once. You just need to check it carefully and mindfully and make sure everything's locked in and go on. But I've unfortunately developed this paranoid behavior where I check in multiple times. And if I were to dig further, probably it's this fear of, safety and safety being compromised and feeling this wound, right? Feeling this fear. A lot of times, wounds are not just necessarily what happens to us or the hurt or the pain that we're feeling. A lot of the times, wounds manifest themselves in the form of fear, right? Fear of something happening, fear of things not going the way that we want, fear of the worst possible situations, right? In my case, why do I need to check the doors multiple times when one is sufficient? That tells me that I need to just have more faith in God, more faith in the locks, more faith in the security that I have in place. That's a wound. Probably that wound is telling me that it's okay to trust. It's okay to let your guards down. It's okay to not be responsible for everything and to allow someone or some being, for example, God, to kind of handle that. So if you do this exercise, I guarantee you'll uncover so many different wounds, both big and small, both those that were recently acquired and those that have been sitting there festering for so many years. It's such a beautiful exercise. But again, it all comes down to number one, cultivating that awareness. Number two, realizing what those wounds are. But then number three, having the willingness to address those wounds, right? And I think that part is so critical to the whole equation. Because if you notice and you're aware of, kind of the destructive behavior or the patterns that you're going down on, but you don't have a willingness to get through it, well, then that becomes very challenging. Now, it's okay to stumble. It's okay to fall. It's okay to fall back and then go forward and then fall back again. Ideally, it would be great if we didn't have that, but as long as we're making forward momentum and we're making forward progress, then that's all part of the journey, right? At the end of the day, we're all human. We're never going to get it perfect. We're never going to get it 100% right. But as long as we're trying, as long as we genuinely want to shine a light on all our wounds, and we're making the progress each day, each week, each month, then we're moving in the right direction. And we'll get to a point where there really are no wounds anymore. Or if there are, they're very small and manageable and not something that will totally derail our path to self-realization. So to kind of wrap things up, I believe wounds are wonderful teachers in disguise, right? They're things that from having feelings of loss, feelings of not good enough, feelings of anger, feelings of resentment, feelings of being left out, feelings of not knowing where to go. Like there's so many wounds where if we explore all of our behaviors and trace it back to what started it, we'll be able to reverse those behaviors. We'll be able to reverse those thoughts. We'll be able to unlearn everything that we've accumulated. And when you start to do so, you only feel peace. You feel a sense of lightness. You feel like a certain weight has been lifted off from your shoulders. And you can finally breathe. You can finally live. You can finally experience what this life is really for and what it's all about. So don't underestimate the power of your wounds. They are challenging. They are incredibly difficult. They can really bring the worst out of us. But just remember, right around the corner, they have the potential to bring the best out of us. And it's all about transmuting or transforming the wound into the cure, into the solution. As Rumi said, the wound is where the light enters you. So don't think that the wound is this terrible, unfortunate thing that is the reason for your suffering. That is all temporary. That is all part of a greater plan that is being unraveled behind the scenes and at the same time before your very eyes. As long as you trust the path, as long as you lean into your wounds rather than running away from them, believe me, you will start to see a major shift in your life. And you will start to live from your true essence, from your true core, from your true state of being. So I know I rambled a lot there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys gained some useful tips and insights that can help you on your journey, especially as it relates to this notion of identifying, addressing, and healing from our wounds. Remember, it doesn't matter how quick or how slow your progress is. It doesn't matter if you have 10 wounds or one wound. It doesn't even matter if you don't even know what your wounds are, right? Just having that willingness to keep growing, to keep learning every single day is so important. And it will help you finally kind of shut off the monkey mind, shut off this never-ending hamster wheel to really listen to what is actually being said, what is being communicated through your being via your mind, and what is actually true versus untrue. So thank you again. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please drop a like. I know it's always great to give your vote and give your stamp of approval for others to see, and hopefully the YouTube algorithm uses that. I know they use a lot of metrics, but hopefully that's a positive indicator to then recommend that video to other folks who may be on a similar path and dealing with some of the same challenges and opportunities. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want more weekly and regular content on spirituality and daily living. As I mentioned, this is a huge passion project of mine. I know my time has really been limited these past few months, but I try my best to, at the very minimum, produce a video every week on a relevant topic and just share my insights, share my experience, share my vulnerabilities, share my own journey. And hopefully, I hope that this, at the end of it, just provides an inspiration and a guiding post, like I know so many people have done for me. But I'll leave you with that. I wish you the best of luck in shining a light on your wounds. And, I can feel an amazing weight being lifted off my shoulders. And I'm sure you will feel the same way as well, if not already, by grabbing your wounds by the horns and not running away from them anymore, but rather using them to benefit you. So thank you. Have a wonderful day. And I look forward to seeing you next time.